I'd like to call the Public Schools of Robeson County Policy Committee to order. We'll start with a moment of silence. Thank you. To start, just to name out policy committee members that are present, we've got Dr. Terry Locklear, Craig Lowry, and Melissa Ocean's trying to get on virtually. She's having some difficulties. And it looks like we have Miss Martha Locklear virtual. We'll move to topics. Spring policy updates 2025. Mr. Bobby Locklear.
Good evening, Chairman Phillips. The majority of our policies we're going to walk through today will be updated or making reference to Title IX policies or procedures as required by the federal government. So about 2 years ago, we updated all of our Title IX policies to meet federal mandates as of that time. Since that time, or in between that time, administrations changed, of course, and so we met to revise all of our Title IX policies. And now we are back again because of administrative changes to revert the majority or almost all of our Title IX policies back to what they were about 2 years ago. So although you're going to see a lot of red in these policies, all of these policies are just simply reverting back to where we were at 2 years ago. So it's not anything new or anything we're unfamiliar with. It's stuff that we were already doing. So just to walk through some very quickly through these, our parental engagement policy makes reference to Title IX now where it did not before. And if I'm not mistaken, it adds in sexual harassment and how to making sure that we notify our parents about sexual harassment in that grievance policy should they have an issue. Also within policy 1310, it makes reference to our other policies that parents would need to know about should their situation arise. 1510, school safety. Rewords all of our policies to go into a line with the new Title IX policies 1710, 1726, 1735. And that's the only update in 1510 is policy references. 1710, discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law. Remove some of the previous language definitions on the basis of sex and simply talks about sexual harassment in this policy. We will need to update this policy 1710 on page 9 to include our new Section 504 coordinator, which is Dr. Sherry Herndon. The other folks will remain the same. Dr. Carr is our ADA coordinator. Mr. Campbell would discuss anything with age discrimination, and any other discriminatory laws would come to my office. So the bulk of the changes now you're going to begin to see in 1720. Again, all of this removes the language from the previous administration to revert back to where we were at 2 years ago. So again, you're going to see a lot of red, a lot that's struck through. Again, it's just to align with the new administration's thought on Title IX. Both of these policies make reference to superintendent making our policies available to parents, students, employees. So we do have posters that are available that are hung in the school. We will have to modify some of the wording on there to fit these new policies, but those will be in place. We also will have our Title IX policy posted on our website. So once these new policies are approved, we will remove the old one and replace it with the ones that are currently going to be adopted. So we will have to rescind the old policy 1725 and come with a complete rewrite. So that's why you see the old policy, all of that is completely struck through. And 1726 makes reference to our grievance process under Title IX. And as referred to earlier, Dr. Carr is our Title IX contact and investigator for the district. There's also an update to 1735, our bullying and harassing policy. Again, adds the language sexual harassment, prohibited conduct, and reporting procedures in this policy.
Got Board Member Melissa Ocean just joined us virtually.
So part of the spring policy updates that came from the North Carolina School Board Association makes reference to revising our remote participation in board meeting policy 2302. As you know, this was in our previous fall updates in 24, had conversation with our board attorney, Mr. Swartz, and also followed back up with his office today. The lawsuit that brought about the change back in 24, that was appealed through the North Carolina Supreme Court. So at this time, it is the pleasure from us to leave a 2302 in place, leave our remote policy in place, not accept the recommendations that are or have come from the School Board Association. Our remote policy covers everything that we need in order for members of the board to participate remotely. There were some other things in the old revision that came out in the fall that said remote participation would not meet a quorum. That has been appealed. There's some other things within that are no longer relevant, and so we feel it's best that we just leave our old 2302 in place.
And Bobby, that policy makes it clear there has to be a state of emergency.
Correct. So there are two ways that a board member can participate remotely. One is through a state of emergency. The other is for health reasons, and those reasons are outlined.
So you're saying if I want to participate, may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
May I
Manuel.
speak?
Sorry, and I forgot to include you a while ago. And Dr. Manuel's present.
I'm not on the committee. I'm just here as an observer. I guess I'm confused. The state recommended that we not be virtual unless what now?
So
I mean, a member.
yes, so originally back in fall of 24, there was a lawsuit between Anson County and I cannot remember the other party, where they say they violated the remote meeting law. So that made it all the way to Supreme Court up to this.
Mhm.
So the Supreme Court is now saying that that lawsuit really did not have value. So the advice from our attorney is that the way we have written 2302 is in good standing. There's not issue with our current policy, that we meet all the requirements in order for board members to participate remotely. And again, those two instances couldn't be in the state of emergency, whether locally or state authorized, and health conditions.
So you're saying we can participate remotely only if we have a health emergency, only due to an emergency and because of health reasons?
Yes.
That's correct.
Is there a limit to the number of times that we can participate remotely?
I thought there was coverage. I think there is a number, Dr. Emmanuel.
I remember hearing that one time, is why I'm asking. Which one, baby? Will you read it? Do you mind, would you allow her to read what she found? Dr. Carr?
You got, so number 3 says no board member shall participate remotely more than 3 times during a calendar year for a reason other than an order of quarantine, isolation, stay-at-home mandate, or recommendation to limit public interaction. This is regular meetings.
And Bobby, read the last part of that, because the board can waive that limitation.
Yes, they can waive, the board has the right to waive that limitation by two-thirds vote.
Good. Dr. Terry?
So, Mr. Bobby, if I'm looking here at our proposed policy code 2302 under subsection C, conditions and requirements for remote participation, it says a member may attend a meeting remotely if the member is prevented from physically attending the meeting due to physical illness, disability, quarantine, isolation, public health issues, out-of-town travel, unexpected lack of childcare, family member illness or family emergency, weather conditions, military service, or employment obligations.
Yes. And those are the same that is in our adopted policy.
So you just said a few minutes ago there was 2 reasons. There's a state of emergency, and what was the other one?
So the current policy, the wording does go back and forth. So it's got a state declared emergency and a locally declared emergency.
Maybe my interpretation is different. Maybe we can have a fully virtual meeting if those 2 apply.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Now we're talking about 2 different things. So we can have a fully virtual meeting if the 2 apply that Mr. Bobby mentioned, but if an individual board member has these issues, an individual board member can participate remotely.
Correct.
With the limit,
With the limit.
with the limit.
Of course. Mhm. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, so I have a question, and it was along the lines of what Terry was asking, about the conditions. And these are just for regularly scheduled board meetings, right? It's not for these subcommittee meetings, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Craig, hit your button again. One more time. There it is. All right, Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Have a couple of questions. And Dr. Terry, when I want to say it was Florence, we had a virtual meeting, and it's not an easy thing to do, but we had a virtual meeting during the time that we were out with all the board members. So I know it's occurred at least one time, and we might have had 2 meetings at that time. There's probably a couple of questions just to help remind me. If there's red in here with a line through it, that is meaning it's discarded, or okay, red with a line?
Yes,
Okay, and then the red where there's no line, that's something that's being added that's new.
correct.
Okay, and then there's places where there's just red, maybe a word or 2, some kind of change. With the Title IX stuff in here, as you said, we're going back to what we were doing. Mr. Schwartz is familiar with all this and has gave his blessings upon all of this with Title IX.
Yes, so I reviewed, and they sent us, his office sent us an email last week to clarify some of the points within all of this, and everything they sent us matches the recommendations from the School Board Association.
Okay, and my only other comment, and I'm glad the principals are here, Title IX and EC issues, folks. Y'all know this better than I do, can cause us more headaches probably than anything. And I just asked that we got these policies here and just make sure we're consistent with what we do with Title IX for boys and girls in our schools. Because I don't think we've had any issues with this, and we want to keep it this way. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, just for general information, to my knowledge, we only have one Title IX investigation going on at this time.
So again, our recommendation from the administration is not to do anything with 2302 at this point, although it was included in the book to leave our policy as it stands. 2342, voting methods. Now this is, we will need to change voting methods for remote meetings that are held during a state declared emergency. So there, if you're voting during a remote meeting and it's state declared, it would have to be by roll call. So that is one that will need to stand. So technology responsible use, if you will look at that one on 3225, it makes reference to us providing Wi-Fi hotspots and services off school campus. Currently, E-Rate is responsible for our internet service, and we are not providing Wi-Fi hotspots to individuals out through our E-Rate funding. That was the purpose in this whole statement here. So therefore, we do need to include it, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. E-Rate currently does not have the ability to purchase Wi-Fi hotspots. So next, policy 3400 just clears up some language on the grading policy and procedures for kindergarten through second grade, and also adds different language for third through fifth through 12th grade. There's also a section that's added for students who choose to participate in the credit by demonstrated mastery. And to my knowledge, Dr. Carr, that very few of our students decide to go through that process. They would rather take the class. So as you're aware, the state board changed the way our credit recovery works. So policy 3420 needed to be updated to reflect that. For many years, if a child received or participated in credit recovery, the failing grade stood, and they otherwise got a pass-fail when they participated in credit recovery. Now, state board changed their policy regarding credit recovery. Now it must be an average of the original grade and an average of the grade that the child gets in credit recovery to determine a passing grade. Included in your packet today, behind the agenda, Dr. Carr and her team have met with all the high school principals and walked through what our new grading, credit recovery criteria will look like. So I've included that in your packet as well, so that beginning this year for credit recovery, there is not a pass-fail for core classes. If we decide to do credit recovery for elective classes, that can remain pass-fail. But the others must be an average of the two grades. And so again, Dr. Carr and her team have worked with the high school principals to walk through what that criteria needs to be.
Any questions on that? And then let's invite our high school principals if they want to make a comment in terms of that change. Dr. Carr, any additional comment on it?
The other thing is to know there is a cutoff criteria of who will need to take the whole course back over again based on their score and who can participate in credit recovery. So not everybody that fails a class could automatically be part of credit recovery. They have to have a certain score. So if they have anything lower than a 40, they'll actually have to retake the entire course.
Comments from our high school principals? Anyone? Well, I'll call you out, Dr. Barton.
Based on the conversation that we had, I think based on the conversation that we had, I just think it adds
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, based on the conversation that we had, I just think it adds some accountability on the end of the student. And also, there's sometimes there's reasons why students recover classes. It's not always because they simply failed. It may have been an attendance issue. It may have been someone left and came back. And so now it gives them an opportunity to be able to for us to truly know that they've mastered the content. And it's not just several P's on a transcript that'll show actual grades. So I think it'll be a good step for our students.
And Bobby, before we move away, I want to go back to policy 3400. Just as a reminder, by policy, we do have a grading floor scale, and that is 50%. So you can never give a grade. That's always a point of contention in buildings. But by policy, we can't give below 50%.
that is correct.
Mr. Craig?
Just making sure, and I don't know how much of that credit recovery I understand now, but since North Carolina Athletic Association has said it doesn't affect the student's eligibility, so a kid can be taking that class and still be eligible to play. Is that correct?
What they stated, you talking about as far as summer school?
Well, let me ask this, when do we do the credit recovery? When do they take those classes? All throughout the year. Okay, so if we got a student that's in high school and they're taking their classes and one of them's credit recovery, that will not hinder them from participating if everything else is okay, or will it?
It should, and now they have went back to state that if a kid, like, say the last semester, a student fails 2 out of 4
Right.
classes, they can take any class in summer school now, and that will count towards one of their passing classes to make them eligible to play students in that next.
Okay. I just want to make sure if it don't affect, then everybody understands that it does not affect a child's eligibility. Okay, thank you.
And I want to make sure, I think I clarified this earlier in 3420. There will be a numeric grade assigned to credit recovery.
The other thing is, so just so to clarify, the floor is 50. So before the floor is applied, that's the grade we're talking about to say if they qualify or not. So before you put that final grade on the report card, that 50, whatever that score is, if it's lower than 40, they have to retake that class. So anything between 40 and 50, they can go ahead and do the credit recovery. The other thing is, once the averages occur, they cannot get above a 70. So that is the highest average you can get through credit recovery.
Moving on to 3620, extracurricular activities and student organizations. As you're aware, last year, the High School Athletic Association approved NIL. Students in high school can participate in NIL agreements. We did not have anything in our policy that addressed that. So we're just adding a statement that a student may participate in an NIL if they choose to. And Glenn, I don't think we have anybody. Yeah. So our next policy, pregnant and parenting students, minor changes here, added the terminology false pregnancy, and also added a timeline of how long we are to honor employees' right for break time to express milk. That's for a year. Staff and student relationships. This is going back to reporting inappropriate conduct from our staff to the State Board of Education. So they've added additional language in there on page 4 of 4. Also, that carries over to child abuse and related threats to safety in 4240. Same thing, our duty to report, and it adds the language of termination of employment, non-renewal of employment contract or suspension without pay. So again, Mr. Campbell and his department are aware of those reporting requirements if we have employees.
And Bobby, both policies make it clear. Historically, in the past, you could accept a resignation for some of these behaviors. That is no longer the case. If there's a violation of these policies, that is not an option. That is a termination and a report to the State Board of Education so that they can revoke the license, correct?
Correct. Operation of school nutrition services, 6220. Again, remove some of the language that was there based on the previous administration. Insurance for student transportation services, it basically says that we can operate a vehicle without bodily injury and property damage. But the other stuff, lease or rent, we do not go into any of that at this point in time. All of our vehicles are owned. Licensure 7130, again, makes reference to the two previous policies about our responsibility to report, and it also adds that same language there. The minor changes in the back of the book just simply revises the titles and or adds additional languages to titles throughout the policy. There's nothing in here in the remaining ones that actually require change other than just general statute update or policy updates based on the previous substantial changes in the front of the book. Next on our agenda is policy 4318.
Bobby, before we move to that policy, Mr. Chair, we do need to entertain a motion that to approve these policies in this committee, and then a motion to move it forward for action in the August board meeting, please.
So we're looking for a motion to approve these as written and move them to the board for review. If we have a motion.
I make a motion to move these to the August board meeting.
Got a motion by Ms. Melissa Ocean, second by Mr. Craig Lowry. All in favor, say aye. Pass.
Thank you.
And again, at the full board meeting, I will make the same recommendation, Mr. Phillips, to approve the spring updates minus 2302. That we will leave 2302 as is. So next, we have on the agenda is the proposed policy 4318, use of wireless communication devices. So as you're aware, and I've included a copy of the recently passed general statute 959 that requires each or PSU to develop a policy regarding the use of wireless communication devices for students in the school. So just a little bit about this. We have to have a policy by September 1 that needs to be submitted to DPI with full implementation on January 1, 26. So we will present a draft to you tonight, again, so that we can meet that September deadline. If we need to revise it between now and January, we have that flexibility to do so. Also in your packet, what I included, we did a brief survey of our teachers. We had a total of 400, I think it was 444 respond. We understand in the summer teachers may be out doing other things, but the general consensus from our teachers is that cell phones do create a distraction in the learning environment. Of course, depending on the grade span, you might get different responses, say an elementary school versus a high school. But for the most part, if you look at the first question that was asked, what phrase best describes the effect of cell phone use in your class? And you can see about 35% of the teachers say that it's a daily disruption. with the next highest group saying it's only an occasional disruption in few of my classes. So the next question asks, to be effective, a cell phone policy should about 45% of the teachers who responded or staff responded said they were looking for prevent cell phone access during the entire school day. Others, the next highest one was about 34% said just limit access in the classroom. So the next question, how much daily instructional time is lost? And you can see the majority is going to be between 30 minutes to 1 to 3 hours is lost, according to our teachers.
We got a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr.
Mr.
Terry.
Bobby, if you don't mind, let me correct you on that first, the first one here, what phrase best describes the effect of cell phone use? So we got 34.5 and 34.7. 34.5, no impact. 34.7, daily disruptions. So we've got almost an equal weight on both sides of the spectrum. 34.5, 34.7. And let me also ask, was this survey anonymous?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so we have taken our cell phone policy, again, coming from the School Board Association based on the general statute. We've shared that with our principals. And what we're going to ask now, we've asked 3 of our principals from each grade level span to provide a perspective on the policy and implementation in their buildings. Ms. Kendra Dees.
And before Kendra speak, we did have a virtual meeting with all the principals. We got their input, very, very powerful. And they sent to us a copy of their in-house policies that they're using, correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
We have a question. Go ahead, Dr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be minor, Bobby, but when you, Mr. Locklear, when you are writing the policy, would it be beneficial to list also smartwatches, tablets, and things of that nature? Or do you have it listed someplace?
All right, so the policy itself, under number 2, definitions, wireless communication devices, this language comes straight from the general statute. I know some folks have had questions about smart watches, but we can add it, but clearly the definition would include smart watches in that.
I think, this is my opinion, I think it's best to just plain parentheses list it. And then that will solve it, because I can see some smart kid or smart parents saying, you didn't say a thing about a smart watch. That's not a cell phone.
Yes.
You didn't say a thing about a tablet.
Well, it does have tablet
Does
and
it have
laptop.
tablet? Okay.
Bobby, and let me ask for the group. The law is still pending, correct? Unless they've taken action.
No, this law has been ratified.
It ratified.
It's ratified, okay.
Thank you.
And we've got virtual Ms. Millsation with her hand raised.
Okay, so as a parent, I'm never going to agree to this policy, because I don't feel like, I do know that cell phones can be a distraction, but they also are used in emergency situations. And I want to understand, if we're placing this policy, enforcing this for our kids, are we going to enforce the same policy for the adults in that classroom? Because when I visit schools, a lot of times I'm seeing them on the phones, and I'm sure that's a distraction. They're on their phones, they're on their smartwatches. So if we're going to enforce something for the kids, we may as well go ahead and do it for the house.
So before we move on, Paul, Bob, walk us through the policy
Okay.
that we did today and kind of explain some points. That's going to help before we get into it.
Okay, so just to walk through the policy, and again, we already had a policy in place, but we're making revisions to meet the general statute. So within the first paragraph, it says clearly, as Ms. Ocean just noted, the board understands and exercises that the use of wireless devices Where am I at? Okay. So again, we understand that there are issues with having the cell phone devices within the building. So as Ms. Ocean just stated, we have to balance the interests and needs of the students and parents in the school community on how to use those devices in the building. So within that first paragraph, we always also allow principals to establish additional limitations on the use, possession, and display of wireless communication devices. We understand that we cannot have a one-size-fit-all policy across the district, but we also understand that the general statute requires us to have a policy that says during instructional time, students may not have their devices visible, turned on. So that's when we talk about instructional time, that is the time a child is assigned to a teacher. So Dr. Emanuel has already alluded to what is a wireless communication devices. And if it's the pleasure of the committee, we can definitely add smartwatches to that. So authorized use during instructional time. So our proposed policy is not a total ban of a student having possession of their device. Our proposed policy or draft policy does say students are permitted to possess wireless communication devices on school property as long as they are not turned on, used, or displayed during instructional time or otherwise directed by school rules or school personnel. So again, we're not doing a total ban as some districts have done. We are still allowing those students to possess their phone as long as it's not turned on or visible during the instructional time. We also know that students with certain medical conditions may need access to their wireless device, whether that's a cell phone or smartwatch or whatever. So again, we would manage those through the child's IEP or Section 504 plan. The next sentence, we are going to amend that next sentence, Ms. Ocean, I think to address your issue in terms of emergencies. And it's going to read, it currently reads, where administrators are struck out, we are going to revise that to say teachers and administrators may authorize individual students to use their device, provided that they supervise the students in the event of an emergency. So we understand that parents' fear is that if something happens at school, my child will not be able to get in touch with me. So we are addressing that. We are addressing that in that statement. Students can use their cell phones before or after school hours. We felt as a group, and even speaking with principals, that we felt it was best to determine what our policy was going to be, put that policy out there, gather feedback from the start of school until January 1 before we implemented any consequences. So we do have a brief section here that addresses consequences, but we understand that we're going to have to go further with our consequences, because if you have that child that pulls the phone out during class time, what's going to be the consequence for that particular child? Although in the policy, it does say that the school employee can take it up, but we have until January 1 to develop full consequences if students decide to have their phone out, use it while the teacher's teaching it, have it turned on during class time, whether it be that smartwatch, tablet, or whatever. But we felt it was beneficial, or we needed to do the policy first, then consequences second.
We got a question. There you go.
So there's a line here that states that principals may limit the use of wireless communication devices as provided in this policy, but it also says principals may establish additional limitations on the use, possession, or display of wireless communication devices consistent with this policy. So what is an example of a situation where a principal may establish an additional limitation?
All right, so we have principals, when we met, some principals last year and even before that would have a policy where there is a total ban. As the children enter the building, they take them up, put them in cubbies. At the end of the day, they get them back. That works at some of our schools, our middle schools, that's very effective there. Again, at our high schools, that may not work. So for the high schools are going to say, based upon the policy, you cannot have your cell phone out, displayed, in during the class time. The high school principals have reported that during class change or at lunchtime, they don't have a problem if the child has their phone. It's during that instructional time. So again, we felt that we could not write a one-size-fit-all policy. Principals still needed some authority in the building, as most of the middle school, not most, some of the middle school principals take them up. High school says, no, there's no way we can facilitate taking up the devices and getting them back out. Let the kid have them. As the policy and general statute says, you just can't have them turned on or displayed during instructional time.
So if my child goes to a school where a principal has established a policy above and beyond this, where maybe, I guess, parents will be notified at the beginning of the year, we don't allow phones at all. And when they walk through the door, if they have one, then it's going to be taken, I guess, for the rest of the day, and they would get it back later that day. And so who does that, who does that liability fall on? Where, you know, if a phone gets lost or there's some confusion about whether one got actually taken, where does that liability fall?
Right. So several things to address. Okay, one is we're not recommending a total ban, period. That's not what our policy would do.
I'm talking about for
I got-
individual principal.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
got it. But what we're saying, so that the public listen, will understand, this is not a total ban policy. Student can have phone on their person, can't have it out. We're going to protect instructional time. Now, to broaden that conversation and definition to communication devices, principals will have the authority, if we have kids who pornography, they're going to lose the right, and the principal has the authority for that they cannot use any type of device in a building. Principals address that. We may have had a couple of cases, but kids who continue to go to those sites, those kinds of things, or when we expect our principals to step up and go beyond this policy. Any of the principals had issues with that and want to address that, please?
There we go. Hold on, let me turn your mic on. Where's it at? There you go, you're good.
So we've had instances in the past where students have used their Chromebooks, they've used other devices that was connected to the network to access sites that they couldn't. And so after having conversation with them, with their parent, guardian, and then we deemed like it was necessary to no longer allow that student to have access to a device while they were at school because they were abusing their use of the technology. So with that, then we will go and provide the alternative assignments and things that they needed in order to still get their education.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So my question was, when we confiscate a device, like at the beginning of the day, and somebody has to keep up with it all day, is there like a system, or who assumes that responsibility and that liability? Is it the individual that takes it or the principal?
So in conversation with our principals that have a no cell phone policy on their campuses, I think one of your questions early on were who would notify the parents. Principals would take the responsibility of notifying their parents through messaging or in their student handbook. And that's the way they've handled that before. We have at least 2 or 3 middle schools that have been practicing that for 2 to 3 years. Now, when the cell phones are taken up, all of the schools have a locked location where those phones go. So to my knowledge, we have not had a situation where a cell phone has gone missing from those schools that have taken them up. So it's not that we take up the cell phones. It's my understanding, principals, tell me if I'm wrong, and they go and just sit in a corner in a teacher's class. There's a specific location that limited access is in where these cell phones go.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby.
We got one more question. Mr. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Bobby, I'm listening to what was said about we can't do one thing and put it in all the schools and say, this is how we're going to do it. And again, I'm gonna go back, we're not banning cell phones, so anybody in the public listening, we're not banning. The comment, this is just food for thought about we're not doing one size fits all. I think we've had issues before, like book bags. This school a lot says you gotta have this kind, this school says you gotta have this kind, and then the kids transfer and there's issues. So to me, if there's a certain part of this thing about cell phones at Red Springs High, and the student ends up going to Parnell Sweat or any other school, and it's different. My question and just comment is, how much different will it be? And I think we need to be, that's gonna have to be communicated and be very careful of how much different we get into where you can have them. Like I said, if you can't even walk down the hall at one school with them, but the next school you can, there's gonna be, I think, be some issues for us or y'all to deal with, because people's gonna be complaining. And I mean, that's just thought. I'm not saying what to do, but that's just a thought.
And so, Mr. Craig, what we have started, each high school, well, not each high school, I'm sorry, each group of principals met last week after we discussed the policy and started the conversation about what some of those commonalities needed to be within each grade level span. So again, we're not to the point yet where we're going to put everything in black and white and say this is going to be absolute where it's at. This is going to be our starting point with the opportunity to make changes or revisions prior to full implementation by January 1.
And let me add, if I can, one other thing. You're not doing it now, but when January or before that we get into consequences, ever how it can be done to where it's the least problem for teachers and principals as far as consequences if a child does this, this shouldn't be something they're having to spend 30 minutes or an hour on as far as dealing with because somebody's got a cell phone. Make it cut and dry and make that consequence, consistent across the county. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
The principals.
Principals, Ms. Kendra?
Good evening. I think at the elementary sector, concern becomes, we haven't had an issue with phones. Of course, we've had our own policies, again, as Mr. Bobby said, in place, and they've worked for us. The only concern I think that they have, along with myself, is that if we put something blanket out there and we say that they can bring them, then it becomes an issue where we have bigger issues with elementary kids bringing cell phones and pulling them out because they're not as mature as high school students are. And where we don't have that issue now, I believe the potential there again. And I think Mr. Bobby, we talked about it. It comes down to the language that we put into the policy. But again, take elementary into consideration that this has not been an issue. These children are not mature enough to handle these phones, and they do a lot of things they shouldn't, but we've kept it under control with basically saying that they can't have them. I don't go search for them. I know they have them, yes, but because they know I say you can't have them, then they're less apt to actually bring them out. I think we might have picked up maybe 3 last school year, 3 or 4 that we had to lock up and a parent had to come get it. So again, I think that's the elementary concern, is that our children, we don't have issues now, but if we open it up for them, they're going to bring them in and they're absolutely going to take them out because again, they're not mature enough to handle cell phones at the age. Again, we do have issues with 5th and 6th grade, but that's the extent of it. Thank you.
Good evening. A couple of things from the middle school. Unique situation at Littlefield's 4-8. 4th and 5th, hardly ever, probably 10, 20% you may know that might have something. 6, it sort of increases. 7th and 8th, as you get on up in the little bit older grades, you're going to have more. Most of our problems, rarely, you tell them, put them up, don't want to see them or give them to you. Don't have a whole lot of problems. 2 or 3 habitual offenders, through the year, you've had to talk to somebody. not a lot. Our biggest problem's the bus and the bathrooms. Let's be honest. When they sneak them to the bathroom, you know, whatever they're, you know, they've already pre-planned or, you know, whatever. But buses and restrooms is our biggest one. And my only thing that I was reading over the policy is when we get to an emergency, and this is language you're gonna have to, it's, you know, we're gonna carry out the orders. But what's an emergency? If I left my socks or my shoes, is that an emergency? That's my own. I mean, you know, a child's sick or we need to get to them, you know, if we do a blanket, I'm sort of like Miss Kendra, what's an emergency? That's all for me.
Good evening. And so what, I think the purpose of the general statute and then the purpose of our policy is to make sure we just protect the instructional time. And so when we met as high school principals last week and we discussed what that looked like for us, we did agree across all the buildings that it would all be the same, that we did not have an issue with students using cell phones during transition and during lunchtime, because we felt like they are mature. They're more mature than our middle school and our elementary students, so they can be trusted to just kind of use it in the way that we allow them to. One thing that we do not allow them to do throughout the day is we have not allowed them to talk on the phone and hold conversations. And so that part has worked. And just as other principals stated, anytime you kind of correct the students, it has worked and they comply with it. But I think the most important part, again, is protecting the instructional time. And I know myself as well as other principals have been constantly looking for something that was going to support us when we're having those conversations with parents and having those conversations with students about why you're in trouble now for pulling your phone out multiple times in the classroom. And I think that this policy and that general statute actually supports that and gives us something to rely back on when we're having those conversations. And in the end, it only benefits the students because there are less distractions inside the classroom.
Thank you.
So our policy really makes it clear, and we will clearly define what emergency is and what those parameters are when we get to that point. I do want to ask any other principal that want to make a statement of what's been going on in your building, anything that you can add to this conversation that would help us with the policy, please.
All right, you're good.
Good evening. Dr. Tyndall at Fairmont Middle. And I want to address what we've done for the last 3 years at Fairmont. We tried it 2 ways. We had the students to come in, they had their phones, but we found issues in the cafeteria before they go to homeroom. They were making TikToks. They were calling out to others, taking pictures of people's backsides and just doing a whole lot of stuff. And we also, the reason we changed it is we got a bomb threat during a cafeteria before classes began. And so we had to start looking at ways that we could deter these types of behaviors. So we started taking them up at the front door when they walk in. We had boxes with the teachers' homerooms, name on it, and we collected the phone from the student. And once the students went to their homerooms, at the end of the day, if that teacher homeroom started out, we found where that student was for the afternoon, and that teacher homeroom end of the day had the phones to give them back to the students. They were locked all day. If the student checked out for any type of appointment, we'd send the parent liaison to double check with the teacher, retrieve the phone, give it to the student, and the student was on their way. So it's work for us. It's cut down. We keep a daily log of how many phones we collect and how many phones we give to each teacher. And then if that teacher had 10 students got the phones. And in the 3 years, we have not lost the phone and we have not damaged the phone. Thank you.
Anyone else? Got a question?
No, you can go. You good. Okay. Listening to the principals talk, I have a question. Just raise your hand, principals. How many of you have had a policy at your school about cell phones? When I say policy, you've had some kind of rule. Yeah. Stand up. If you've had a rule or something at your school. Okay, just about everybody. Okay. Thank you. You can stretch. You can sit back down now. Thank you. Okay. With that said, and listening to the principals talk, my comment, Mr. Bobby, I know y'all brought people in and talked to them, but I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. That if extensively can get these principals in here, and like Mr. Sinclair said, the high school principals met and they have an agreement on what they've come up with, but get the ideas from them, what's been working for them, and incorporate that into the policy as we've got it here. And again, Mr. Sinclair made the comment that putting a policy in just gives them a little bit of backing, more backing when they're going to the school and saying, this is what we're doing and this is the policy and we have to follow. So I think it's something that definitely can be worked out that way. Thank you.
Mr. Trey and then Dr. Emanuel.
Dr. Williamson, I just want to be clear on something because I've heard it twice, especially at the middle school and elementary school level with the emergency word that is in that policy there. We're going to be consistent across the board about what an emergency is and is not.
Yes, that's our intent.
Is that going to be added to this policy?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Emanuel?
In all fairness, and I'm really right along with Ms. Oceanus, when she made the statement about what would be our procedure with the employees and cell phones during class. Mr. Bobby, can you address it, or you may want to have a principal address it?
Yes.
I'd like to know that.
I'm sorry. So yes, we did this. That did come up as one of our points in our principals meetings. So the general statute in this is directed towards students. We do have a responsible use policy for staff. So we said we would use that as our means to communicate with staff about that responsible use in the classroom.
So break it down to milkman language. What does that mean about teachers and cell phones during instructional time? What would you say that meant? In other words, can a principal respond maybe to how they deal with it? Is that okay?
And part of that, Dr. Manuel, for me and the principals, I should never walk into a classroom during instructional time and find anyone, student or employee, on a cell phone. Unless it's an emergency.
Do you mind if one
Yes,
principal
please.
comments? So
Yes, please.
how would maybe, cause I hate to say it, but I went into a middle school PE right in front of me, which I'm not important. The teacher took a 5-minute conversation on the telephone during a PE class. I'd just like to hear a principal comment on how they address to their staff about personal calls and on cell phones. Anybody, and this is not, I got you, I'm just curious, what boundaries do you see it? One of the Brooks brothers. Yeah, either one of you. Avery, how do you address cell phones and employees? Either one, somebody.
Dr. Munn, you know I can't hear a lick. So
Okay.
you were asking, how do we,
How do you address the staff? What procedures do you put in place? How do you say to them, don't use your cell phone during class? Your
Te-
staff, your teachers, your whatever employees, your counselors or whatever.
and I'll say for the most part, Dr. Munn, most teachers do what they're supposed to. And there's not a school in this county or state that don't have people that don't do what they're supposed to.
Yes,
But
sir.
the biggest thing is getting in and out of classrooms. This past year, I would tell anybody, I didn't do my very best job as far as doing a lot of walkthroughs this year. I had a lot of help from other APs that were doing that for me too. But regardless, just getting in and out of classrooms and keeping an eye on, and I hate to say keep an eye on teachers, but it's really just following up and doing your job. But if you put that in place and just tell teachers during instructional time, this is what we expect from students and we expect from our staff as well. For the most part, most of them's going to jump on board. And for those other ones, you just have to get on them a little bit differently. I don't see it being like a real big problem. I just don't see it. Even like with cell phone things we're talking about, like Sinclair was saying, our biggest issue would be kids going to the bathroom during class time. And then they go to the bathroom, you know what they do? They got their cell phone in their pocket. And that's the only reason they're going to the restroom. So they're wasting 10 or 15 minutes of class to go to the restroom just so they can get on their cell phone. You tell them they can't take their cell phone, they go back and sit back down. Because the whole purpose to get out of class was to use the restroom and get on your cell phone. Well, the first purpose is use the cell phone, but regardless, to answer your question, I don't see a big problem with the teachers being a headache. I just don't see that happening.
Well, good.
So, okay. But things aren't perfect at Lumber either today. But
Well, they're near perfect, aren't they, Mr. Brooks?
we're getting close to it. That's the goal.
Yeah,
Any other principal?
I'm
Chime in?
finished.
All right, we got a question. You're good.
I mean, in all actuality, what we're being asked to do here in order to follow the law that's been enacted is to limit wireless devices for students. You know, and I trust these professionals that are working in our buildings, principals and teachers to use their own judgment when it comes to their actual use of these devices. Because I mean, at the end of the day, of course, there's a difference between being a student and being a teacher as far as like your activity in the classroom. But if a teacher pulls out a phone and just looks at the message and just replies okay while they're doing group work or walking around their classroom, I don't see that as a major issue. Now, it might be different, you know, when you walk in, Dr. Emmanuel, and somebody takes a 5-minute phone call. Now, that's a different thing than just looking at your phone and swiping up or whatever. But, you know, I would just hope that, and I trust that our teachers and our individuals in the buildings are using their, you know, using their common sense to sort of exercise their use or to limit their use as appropriate. But if we can just get a handle on following this policy or when we adopt it, then of course it's going to have to be followed, you know, to the extent of the law. That's going to be a big ask. And you know, when something's voted on at the legislature, and then we have to enact a policy here, which of course this only applies to students, and that means that somebody's going to have to monitor it, and it's going to be the individuals in the classroom. And what can we do as a board, or what can the administration do to support teachers and to support those individuals in the classroom that are going to have to be carrying this out on a daily basis? Is there going to be a system where, you know, you've got 1 strike, 2 strikes, or whatever for these students? Like we were saying before, if individual schools have different policies or different standards, then it's going to have to translate to the classroom as well. You know, if you've got a student taking 4 classes and they're saying, well, this teacher lets me keep my phone out the whole time, and this another one don't say anything. So is there anything that we can do as a board, or is there something from the administration or the district level that can be done to support teachers while they're enacting these policies?
So to address, I think one of the key things, and this has been mentioned several times, is communication to the parents. So that's why we want. I'm sorry. So I think one of the key things, and it's been mentioned several times before, is effective communication to the parents. So once this policy is adopted, to be able to communicate this to the parents, to say our policy is during that instructional time, your child will not possess, they can possess, will not turn on, display, or have their cell phone out. That's a clear expectation in every classroom, whether it's the high schools, whether they're walking down the hall during class change, but the clear expectation is when they enter that door, that cell phone's put away. Versus the other schools that may take them up. At the end of the day, cell phones are not appropriate during the instructional time. That's going to be key in every classroom. So it's not going to be a difference where teacher A says, hey, have it out, I don't care. Teacher B says, absolutely not, put it away. So it's going to be the same expectation once this policy is enacted in every classroom. But I do believe the key is having that communication early on, Ms. Jessica, communicating this with parents. Number one, this is not a PSRC board decision. This is a general statute decision. We're enacting that general statute, and what we're saying is during that instructional day, and I'll use the phrase 8 to 3, our expectation is very clear. Your child will not display their phone unless it's in the event of an emergency. So there won't be that variance between teachers having that variance to say, you can, you can't. And the consequences are going to be the same across all boards, all situations. So if student A is at Littlefield and they pull out their cell phone, student B's at Lumberton High during the class and they pull out their cell phone and begin to use it, consequences are going to be the same. That's why we said we've got till January 1 to develop those consequences for students who use or display their cell phone during the instructional day.
One more question, we're gonna move on.
At one point in the history of this board in the last few months, there was some discussion about something called yonder pouches. And those would have been a solution as far as district-wide application of how we would handle these. Of course, if they're in a bag during instructional time, there wouldn't be much of an issue. But now that I haven't heard yonder pouches discussed in a while, since that's perhaps not an option now, in lieu of that, what is our solution is just to do what you said, Mr. Bobby, talk to parents and communicate and ensure that we have consistent execution in the whole district, which is a little bit different than them having a physical location to have them and put up.
Right. So again, the general statute does not require us to have a total ban.
Right.
It still requires that student to possess. So again, our policy is not using the yonder pouches.
Which was cost prohibited. It was take us $500,000, and we did not see that as a good investment.
Right.
And so, I'm sorry, and so with this, the child is still has the ability to possess the phone, just not during that instructional time. That's all the policy boils down to. And so if it's the pleasure of the policy committee, the recommendation we will take to the full board will be this draft with the 2 revisions of adding smartwatches to number 2 under definition. And our recommendation on page 2 would be, that last sentence should say teachers and administrators may authorize.
And define.
And we will define emergency.
Right. Now, let me ask Bobby with that, and ask both chairs now. Would you prefer that we would draft this policy, put it on the agenda under information, have another discussion at the board meeting, and then move it to action, or will you tonight suffice? What would be
I think if they draft it the way that we just said with the 3 revisions that were on there and go ahead and send it back out to us through email,
Mhm.
and that would give us enough time, board, that would give us enough time to chew on it, make sure we're good with it, and then go from there. Mr. Craig, Dr. Manuel?
I feel the same too.
Good.
Yeah, along with the clear definition of what we're gonna define as an emergency.
You good? All right. So, looking for a motion to move policy 4318, use of wireless communications devices, to the board at the next meeting with the 3 revisions that were noted. We have a motion. We got a motion by Mr. Craig Lowry,
Second.
second by Ms. Melissa Ocean. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. All right, this time I'd like to thank our principals, the administrators for being here tonight. I mean, it really means a lot. Your hard work does not go unnoticed, I promise. You guys do a lot. And I appreciate all that you do. And I'd like to give Patterson 5 minutes to talk about the football jamboree. I told him I was going to put him on the spot.
Good evening. Of course, you all know tomorrow starts the fall season for all high school sports. And with having said that, we are very excited to bring back the Robeson County, Public Schools of Robeson County Football Jamboree. That was a hit in the past. And for some reason, they got away from bringing everybody together. So this will be our first in a while. So it will be held on August the 8th at St. Paul's High School. The cost is $8. We will not be accepting Public Schools of Robeson County passes. Only the state passes will be accepted at these games. We have 4 games on tap. The first game beginning at 5 o'clock. We have Fairmont versus E.E. Smith. And then at 6 o'clock, Purnell Sweat versus Southview High School. 7 o'clock, Lumberton Senior High versus Red Springs High. And the nightcap will be St. Paul's versus Hope County at 8 o'clock. So we ask that you come out, and support this event. Spread the word, fill the stands. If you want to see some exciting football, this is an opportunity for you to come out. So I appreciate the opportunity of sharing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Glenn, will you address to our public and to the board how we're going to deal with the heat issue now that tomorrow is the official start? What do we have in place?
Oh, yes. Well, I have talked to all the athletic trainers. They have wet bulbs, and they are in control of every practice. I have asked the athletic directors to stress to those that can to practice early morning, try to have those kids off the field by at least 9 a.m. And they cannot start until after 6:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoons, providing that they fall under the guidelines of the North Carolina High School Association Heat Advisory. So all athletic trainers are aware, and they will be giving those kids water breaks as needed. And they will definitely make sure they are hydrated. There will be hydration stations prepared for those athletes. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. Got a motion by Mr. Craig Lowry,
Second.
second by Ms. Melissa Ocean. Adjourn.